I get it. You two are serious. Let's proceed with the divorce, shall we? Are you okay with that? Yes, thank you. The timing is perfect. Now I can go on next week's trip without any sneaking around. What a situation. With both the pregnancy and divorce confirmed, today's the right time for a getaway. It'll be harder to travel with a bigger belly, so we planned this trip now. I was actually going to lie about a business trip next week. I'm in the middle of divorcing my husband after discovering his affair. It's unbelievable. Since I mentioned divorce, my husband and his mistress have been openly discussing their plans in front of me. They even talked about the lies they were going to tell to make this trip happen. Their audacity is astounding. After deciding on the divorce, I moved into a hotel temporarily. There, I received an envelope addressed to me. Inside was a completed divorce form. I know they want to finalize things quickly, but sending it during their trip? Are they mocking me? I'm bewildered by their actions, but having the papers makes it easier for me. Fine, I'll file for divorce. I'll also arrange to move my belongings tomorrow. I decided it's time to make these two realize the gravity of their actions. I'm Jennifer, a 36-year-old pharmacist. People often assume I've been married for a while with older kids, but I'm actually a newlywed, married to Kevin for less than a year. Everyone called our marriage a miracle, and I agree. It wasn't just that I married at my age, but also that my husband, 10 years younger and quite handsome, was part of it. I proudly shared his photo when announcing our marriage. We met at work, an older woman like me and a younger man. I'm not particularly social, and with many women at my workplace, most customers are elderly, so I rarely met young men. With no romantic prospects, I suddenly realized I was over 30. While I wanted to marry eventually, I found fulfillment in my work. About 2 years ago, just as I was settling into that mindset, an unexpected encounter changed everything. Excuse me, can you help me? Sure, I'll take your prescription. It was at the pharmacy where I worked that my then 24-year-old husband entered. A salesman, he had been in a traffic accident during his rounds and came in to pick up patches for his injuries. Handsome men rarely visited, so my colleagues and I secretly got excited, though they were all married, and I didn't think a young man like him would be interested in me. We admired him from afar, treating him like a celebrity on TV. I simply processed his medicine and payment, appreciating his looks but nothing more. His visits for treatment continued, making my workplace a regular stop for him. Sorry, can you help me with this? Sure, I'll take your prescription. As usual, my husband and I only exchanged necessary words. This was his third visit for patches, and I figured his treatment would soon end, meaning this might be the last time I'd see him. As I fetched the patches and handed over the prescription, I noticed a note attached with a string of letters and numbers. Initially, I thought it might be some work-related note, but it seemed odd for such instructions to be on a prescription. Curious, I peeled off the note and examined it closely. It looked like an ID, possibly for a messaging app. Why would his contact information be on the prescription? I wondered. Confused, I asked my colleagues, is this a hospital directive to contact someone? My question surprised the three married colleagues present. Worried I had said something inappropriate, I felt embarrassed until they accused me of showing off. One even threw a paper and pen at me, demanding I write down my contact information. It was then that I realized the note was my husband's discreet way of sharing his details with me. I hadn't been oblivious or naive. I simply never imagined he would pass me his contact information. Understanding finally dawned. I quickly wrote down my details and hurried back to where my husband was waiting. Sorry for the delay. Here's your medication for this time. Thank you. As I handed over the patch as usual, expecting the usual routine, my husband calmly took it. The only difference this time was that I had discreetly slipped a piece of paper with my contact details into the package. That night, I debated whether or not to reach out to him, staring at my smartphone on the table. It screened dark. I wanted to, but I found myself hesitating, searching for a reason to delay. Suddenly, my phone lit up and buzzed, startling me. It was a message from my husband inviting me out to dinner. I had no reason to decline. He continued to ask me out, and from there, we started dating, eventually leading to marriage 2 years later. During our courtship, I once asked him why a young man like him had given his contact details to an older woman like me. I thought you were in your 20s until our first dinner date. What did you think when you found out my age? I was surprised that you were older than I initially thought. Is that all? Huh? Yeah, pretty much. If I like someone, I go for it, regardless. My husband, not understanding the deeper meaning behind my question, replied with his own question. It seemed age was not a factor for him in love or marriage. In that moment, I felt embarrassed for worrying so much about my age. However, as my concerns about age dissipated, new worries about wedding expenses and starting our life together arose. Should I contribute more financially? I found it difficult to broach the topic directly, so I hesitated. I earned significantly more than my husband, thanks to my savings as a pharmacist compared to his sales job, exacerbated by our age difference. Naturally, I wondered if he felt uncomfortable earning less than his wife. Besides, being only 26, he hadn't saved much yet, and I felt guilty about him bearing the cost of our wedding and new life. Why don't we split it 50-50ths? I'll work harder from now on. Like my age-related concerns, this worry too proved unnecessary. My husband reassured me, easing all my fears, so by the time we married, I felt genuinely happy and free of doubt. Colleagues and friends congratulated us, and I believed we would lead a joyous married life. However, things soon began to change. The first 3 months were blissful. My husband rushed home eagerly. We spent weekends hand in hand, and he helped around the house. The only missing piece for a perfect life was a child, though my age made me apprehensive. Yet, having accepted this, I knew my husband would understand. I decided to set aside the issue of children and fully embrace our current happiness. Yet, 3 months into our marriage, our blissful newlywed life began to crumble. Are you going to be late again tonight? Yeah, probably the usual time. Lately, you've been coming home so late. Sometimes you miss the last train and have to take a taxi. What? Are you really complaining when I'm working so hard? No, that's not what I meant. My husband, irritated by my words, slammed the front door shut with a forceful bang. The vibration knocked over a picture frame of us on the entrance shelf. I gently picked it up and set it upright before slowly heading out to work myself. He's right. It's selfish of me to expect him home early when he's working so hard. But I'm not trying to be selfish. I'm just worried because his demeanor has changed so much lately. Hey, isn't today trash day? Isn't it your turn to take it out? Oops, my bad. I'll remember next time. You said that last time and still forgot, right? Is it really a big deal to leave the trash inside for a day or two? Yes, it is. Leaving trash around for days isn't okay. Stop nagging. If it bothers you so much, why don't you do it all yourself? When I brought up the issue with my husband, who was lounging on the sofa engrossed in his phone, he gave me an annoyed look and stormed off to the bedroom. Before we got married, we agreed to share household chores. I know he's not great at it, but he insisted that we need to cooperate despite the challenges. Yet those agreements seemed to crumble just 3 months into our marriage, and slowly, more responsibilities fell on my shoulders. It looks like today, I'll be taking out the trash alone. I had initially planned to handle most of the housework, so that wasn't much of an issue. The real problem was my husband's changing behavior. He used to be so kind before we married. Why did he suddenly change? I didn't want to entertain the thoughts forming in my mind, desperately trying to push him away. 3 months into our marriage, his transformation escalated beyond mere attention-seeking behaviors. Kevin, did you spend our money again without discussing it? I just withdrew my part of the salary. I think we need to save for the future, so spending $2,000 or $4,000 a month is questionable. You earn a good salary, and we don't have kids yet. We could manage without my income, couldn't we? He reclined on the sofa, engrossed in his smartphone. He no longer made eye contact when we spoke at home. It seemed his phone had become his constant companion, not me. Stop staring at your phone all the time and look at me when we're talking. Quit nagging me. You're starting to sound like my mother. My husband, still fixated on his phone screen, brushed past me and retreated to the bedroom. I felt at a loss with a husband who not only stopped contributing financially but also neglected our relationship. He came home late every day, and on weekends he went out alone, leaving me behind. Was he troubled by my higher salary? Was he frustrated by our struggles to conceive? I pondered if I should have been more empathetic toward him instead of taking his words at face value, but soon realized such reflections were futile. A few days later, I found myself at a cafe, invited by a friend. It was a serene day with a clear view stretching into the distance. As I gazed out the window, I witnessed my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman, unfamiliar to me, into an obstetrics and gynecology clinic. Shock coursed through me, causing me to grip my coffee cup so tightly I feared it might shatter. This couldn't be a coincidence. My friend, A nurse at that clinic who knew my husband's face from a photo I had shown her had discreetly contacted me. Unable to disclose patient information even to family, she had orchestrated this meeting at a cafe overlooking the clinic, subtly prompting me to observe outside. Instinctively, I kept my eyes on the view, anticipating what she had hinted. I wrestled with the urge to confront them inside the clinic but knew causing a scene there would be inappropriate. Perhaps my husband was innocently accompanying a friend or colleague, so I resolved to wait outside for their exit. After my friend discreetly left, I stood alone for what felt like an eternity, pondering whether my husband was having an affair. Was the woman pregnant, or was this simply a misunderstanding? As the minutes dragged on, my mind raced with anxious thoughts. Finally, when they emerged from the clinic, I gathered my courage and hurriedly approached them. Can you explain why you were at the obstetrics and gynecology clinic? What are you doing here? My husband, usually distant and absorbed in his phone, now stared at me wide-eyed, but I turned my attention to the woman beside him, who appeared visibly uncomfortable. Though nothing was confirmed yet, I steeled myself for the possibility of my husband's infidelity. We can't talk here. Let's go over there. I gestured towards the cafe where I had been with a friend, leading my husband and the woman inside. Even after we settled into the shop, I didn't immediately speak. To steady myself, I ordered the same coffee I had an hour ago. The silence hung heavy, making both my husband and the woman visibly uneasy. They must have felt the weight of my silent scrutiny. I waited until the coffee arrived, taking a sip before breaking the silence. What's going on between you two? Knowing my husband's usual annoyance at my conversations, I skipped the preamble and dove straight into the heart of the matter. At 26, young and charismatic, my husband could easily have found companionship anywhere. I wasn't interested in how or where their affair started. The changes in his behavior had already revealed when it began. I only needed confirmation. Well, my husband faltered, clearly flustered by my direct question. By now, it was evident that the woman beside him was his mistress, the person constantly occupying his attention on his smartphone, explaining his late nights, solo weekends, and financial negligence at home. In my mind, the affair and my husband's behavior formed a seamless narrative. So, you were at the gynecologist's office. Could you be pregnant? Well, my husband squirmed, unable to answer. Frustrated by his silence, my impatience grew, and I drank my coffee faster. Just as I was on the brink of demanding a full confession, it was his mistress who spoke up, not him. You've been caught. There's no running away now. We need to clear things up. But nice to meet you. I'm Katie. Kevin and I are together. The last test wasn't conclusive, but today they confirmed I'm 6 weeks pregnant. Stunned by the sudden admission from the mistress, my hand froze halfway to my coffee cup. Her expression was earnest, as if she saw me as an obstacle to overcome or a final challenge in their relationship with my husband. While her seriousness was evident to me, it felt like a brazen confession. Encouraged by her candor, my husband also found misplaced courage to speak up. We're serious about this. I feel bad for you, but could you consider divorcing us for our sake? Kevin, I appreciate your honesty, but you know this won't be easy, right? Divorce, pregnancy, starting anew, it's a lot to handle. I'll manage as long as I'm with Kevin. As my husband postured like a tragic hero, I felt like an adversary they needed to defeat. I knew he threw himself completely into love, but in marriage, finding someone new required handling things differently. Glancing out the window at the obstetrics clinic, it struck me that age mattered in marriage. It wasn't a commentary on age gap relationships per se, but marrying someone emotionally immature felt risky. With their affair and her pregnancy now out in the open, I would prefer to be the one initiating divorce. Their cavalier attitude, as if they did nothing wrong, infuriated me. I couldn't bear the thought of them triumphing over me and enjoying the happy ending. They needed to understand the gravity of their actions. First, I had to convey my readiness for divorce. It seems you're serious. Let's proceed with the divorce. Really? Thank you. They hugged each other jubilantly, their celebration drawing curious glances. I wished they remembered we were in a public cafe. I felt embarrassed. Good timing with the divorce. Yeah, now we can go on our trip next week without sneaking around. Trip? What trip? It's the perfect time with the pregnancy and divorce settled. We thought we should travel before Katie's belly gets too big. Tonight, I was going to lie and say I had a business trip next week. My grip on the cup loosened, nearly dropping it. Now that I had agreed to divorce, they felt they could openly discuss anything in front of me. They prattled on about their trip and their plans to deceive me. We're getting divorced, right? Shouldn't we discuss some things? Can't you cancel the trip? Well, that's... Really? You want us to cancel? Let us have this trip. I sighed heavily, perhaps the biggest sigh of my life. They were more concerned about their trip than the divorce. Did they even understand why we were divorcing? Because of them. Let's just decide quickly then. What do we need to decide? Well, there's dividing assets and compensation for the affair. I assume the apartment is rented, so one of us has to leave. But I'm not staying. I'll move out. How much is compensation for an affair? Katie, can you look that up? Directed by my husband, his mistress pulled out her phone to search for affair compensation. Such a casual discussion. Despite that, I observed them with a calm demeanor, hoping they would grasp that divorce isn't as straightforward as they believed. The internet says it ranges from $10,000 to $60,000. That much? Can we settle for $10,000? I'm not a legal expert, but that seems low. We can figure out the compensation after the divorce. First, let's discuss the house and money since it impacts our future. Right, you're moving out. Katie and I will stay in the house. I'll leave immediately and move my belongings while you two are on your trip. Next, dividing assets. It's mostly our savings, right? Since our marriage was short, splitting it equally seems fair. Sounds good. Let's do that. Internally, I smiled as my husband agreed exactly as I had hoped, with minimal effort on my part. This was why divorce discussions shouldn't be rushed. To formalize our agreement, I borrowed paper and a pen from the cafe and drafted a simple document. It outlined our decision to divorce due to my husband's affair and the division of our assets. Unaware, my husband signed the document I had carefully prepared. Such a document carried legal weight, so I handled it delicately without folding it. I'll pack my things and head out first. Take care. Thank you for agreeing to the divorce. I smiled at my husband and his mistress before leaving the cafe. Over the next week, while I searched for a new place, I stayed in a hotel. Today, my husband and his mistress were embarking on their trip, and tomorrow, I plan to clear out the old house with movers. Checking my schedule in the hotel, I received a notification about a mail delivery. It was an envelope. What's this? Inside was a completed divorce form. I understood their haste, but sending it during their trip, I sighed, realizing it was better for me to have it first. Got it. I'll handle the divorce and move out tomorrow. Don't worry. I envisioned telling my husband this when they returned. They would surely be shocked and likely call me immediately. 2 nights later, as I relaxed in my hotel room, my ex-husband called. What the hell? Everything's gone from the house. Not everything. I left your clothes and games on the floor. I chuckled, imagining his panicked face. In the background, I could hear his mistress's frantic voice, likely as they checked the emptied house. No wonder they were in a panic. I had stored my belongings from our previous home in a storage unit and sold off everything that clearly belonged to my husband. Anything that didn't sell, I disposed of, including furniture, appliances, and even essential items like shower heads and cooking utensils. The house was now as empty as a vacant property awaiting new occupants. Why did you do this? You need to compensate for this. Why should I? I simply followed our agreement. After the divorce papers were sent, everything was finalized. I divided the property fairly. What do you mean? The furniture and appliances were shared property. We agreed to split them without specifying who gets what, so I sold everything and converted it to cash. Isn't your money on the living room floor under your clothes? I could hear her hurried footsteps over the phone as my ex-husband rushed to the living room, then a thud as he knelt down, followed by a faint murmur. Wait, $600 and some change. That's all from selling everything in the house. Yes, that's correct. Remember, some appliances were brought from our respective homes when we moved in together, so most items didn't fetch a high price. Some even cost money to dispose of. Many smaller items were unsellable and had to be thrown away. The sound of coins dropping indicated his shock. Even I felt that the total of $1,200 was a bit low, but I hadn't aimed for a high profit. My goal was to strip my ex-husband of everything essential and give him as little money as possible, hence why I opted for a recycling shop without much consideration. How am I supposed to live in a place like this? It's empty as if no one's ever moved in. That's not my concern. We agreed to split the assets after the divorce. The document you signed says so. Any complaints?" He fell silent, unable to retort. Regretting the haste of our divorce discussions was futile at this point, and we hadn't even settled everything yet. Save your regrets for after everything is settled. You might have forgotten with the trip and the house, but we haven't agreed on the compensation for the affair. You're right. We haven't settled on the compensation yet. Please keep it low. I spent a lot on the wedding and starting our life together. I'm almost broke now. I'd even used my savings for the trip. I have about $6,000 left. I understand you wanted to make an impression, but overspending wasn't wise. Unfortunately, I'll be asking for $50,000 in compensation for the affair. What? $50,000? Our marriage was short, but we're divorcing because of your affair, and she's pregnant. I suppose it's fair. If you disagree, should I consult a lawyer? He fell silent again. Facing the sudden financial burden in his now empty house must have been overwhelming. Without furniture or appliances, living comfortably was impossible. But with little money left and being only 26 years old, my ex-husband now faced the challenge of paying a substantial amount in compensation. The prospect of furnishing his home with new items was distant. However, as his ex-wife, his lifestyle was no longer my concern. I'll contact you later regarding the compensation. After explaining to my ex-husband why the house was so bare, I hung up. Though I couldn't see his face, this should make him realize the gravity of treating affairs and divorce lightly. Eventually, he agreed to pay $50,000 in compensation for the affair. Consulting a lawyer, I learned I could have asked for more. However, considering his youth and near empty pockets, $50,000 would have a significant impact. My aim wasn't money, that amount felt right to settle upon. The young couple, my ex-husband and his mistress, had hoped to start fresh together, but their plans fell apart. With little savings, she a part-timer, and he left with only about $6,000. They face a bleak reality. After emptying the house, they resorted to using cardboard boxes as makeshift tables and cooked on a portable stove, living in dismal conditions. Within a week, she reportedly left, leaving my ex-husband to face the certainty of child support payments alone. His financial responsibilities grew despite divorcing me to marry his mistress, a plan that crumbled before it began. His troubles extended beyond personal life. He had publicly announced his divorce and plans to marry his mistress on social media during their trip, leading to inquiries at his workplace. While he dodged specifics, rumors about the affair, pregnancy, compensation, and child support spread. The fallout tarnished his reputation, forcing him to resign from his job. Now burdened with paying affair compensation, child support, and securing basic living expenses, he urgently needs to find new employment. Reflecting on this experience, I've come to understand the complexities of love and relationships. While passion and honesty are valued in love, my ex-husband's choices and current circumstances highlight the consequences of rash decisions. From this ordeal, I've learned that not everyone is cut out for love, including perhaps both my ex-husband and myself. In today's world, happiness can take various forms beyond traditional notions of love and marriage. For now, I find contentment in my work, focusing on it diligently day by day.